How did the Syrians topple the regime in 11 days? The regime of Bashar al-Assad fell after 13 years, 8 months, and 23 days since the outbreak of the Syrian revolution, and just 11 days following the deterrence of aggression operation launched by Syrian opposition factions on November 27, 2024. The operation began in Idlib and progressed through Aleppo, Hama, and Homs, culminating in Damascus, the seat of power for the Assad regime, which had ruled Syria for 53 years. Syria without Assad, what happened? Rapid developments over 11 days turned the political and military landscape in Syria upside down. Bashar al-Assad's regime forces faced an unprecedented collapse, losing control over several provinces and major cities, culminating in the fall of Damascus. Opposition forces, meanwhile, announced that their operation continues in other regions until the full liberation of the country. The armed opposition factions, led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and some locally supported groups in northern Syria, managed to overcome their differences and unite their efforts under what is known as the Military Operations Command. This unification made the attacks on regime forces more organized and effective. Starting from Idlib, the opposition completed its control over Aleppo on November 30, 2024, followed by Hama on December 5, 2024, and then Homs, Quneitra, and finally Damascus on December 8, 2024. On the evening of Friday, December 6, 2024, Syrian opposition factions in the south took control of the center of Daraa province, near the Jordanian border, following clashes with regime forces in the province, which is considered the birthplace of the 2011 popular uprising against the regime. On Saturday, December 7, 2024, local opposition groups seized control of the predominantly Druze city of Swaida in the southern part of the country. The opposition relied on urban warfare tactics that overwhelmed the regime forces. This approach combined direct confrontations, infiltration into residential neighborhoods, and seizing vital centers. These tactics led to the rapid collapse of the regime's fragile and weakened defenses, which had been eroded by years of corruption and a steady decline in strength over 13 years of conflict with the opposition. With the fall of Damascus, the Assad regime lost the center of its political and military power, leading to a total collapse of state institutions. The opposition announced its control over all key facilities in the capital, including ministries, airports, official offices, prisons, and military bases. The opposition at the heart of Damascus. At dawn on Sunday, December 8, 2024, Syrian armed opposition factions announced that they had begun entering the capital, Damascus. Meanwhile, Reuters reported, citing high-ranking Syrian officials, that President Bashar al-Assad had left Damascus for an undisclosed destination. According to online flight tracking platforms such as Flight Radar, a plane believed to be carrying Bashar al-Assad was last seen over western Homs after departing from Damascus International Airport, but it later disappeared from radar screens. Simultaneously with their arrival in Damascus, opposition forces successfully entered and liberated Homs, Syria's third-largest city, from regime control. This victory followed the capture of Aleppo and Hama in recent days, as well as the full control of Idlib province in the north. The Assad regime lost control of the capital on the night of Saturday to Sunday, as protesters entered key neighborhoods in Damascus, and regime forces withdrew from the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Interior, and Damascus International Airport. During this period, regime forces retreated from areas such as Al-Kiswa, Sana'a, Madamiyah, Harjala, and Jaramana. In these areas, residents tore up posters of President Bashar al-Assad and smashed his statues. Social media platforms circulated footage showing regime soldiers removing their military uniforms and wearing civilian clothes as the opposition advanced toward the capital. With the dawn of Sunday, the opposition announced that they had stormed the Sednaya prison in the countryside of Damascus and successfully freed the prisoners, marking the end of the era of oppression in this prison, which is one of the largest and most notorious prisons of the Syrian regime. Opposition forces were also able to liberate thousands of prisoners and detainees from the jails of every city they entered. Some of these prisons had held inmates for over 4 decades, as they were imprisoned by the regime of Hafez al-Assad in its infamous detention centers. At the same time, the overall commander of the Military Operations Command, Ahmad al-Shara, al-Jolani, sent a message to the opposition fighters urging them to pray to God with gratitude and enter Damascus humbly. He also called on them to preserve state institutions, stating, "They belong to the great Syrian people." Al-Shara added, "Let us continue together to paint the picture of victory for the greatest revolution in modern history." By morning, thousands of Syrians flooded the streets of Damascus neighborhoods to celebrate, tearing down all statues and portraits of Bashar al-Assad and his father, Hafez al-Assad. Mosques in various cities and towns rang out with chants of Takbir, God is the greatest.
Dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe, dass ich mich in diesem Jahr eingesetzt habe, dass ich anständig meine Zeit